Chosen one, no more hope, it's happening. In the shadowed valleys of Eldrath, where the mountains bled black iron and the sky never quite forgot the color of ash, they had waited for centuries. The scrolls of the first seers, written in blood and starlight, spoke of one who would rise when the world cracked open. A child born under a dying moon, marked by the spiral scar of forgotten fire, destined to mend the fracture between mortal flesh and the endless void. They called him the Chosen One. His name was Kael. He was not born in glory. His mother died giving birth to him in a crumbling shepherd's hut on the edge of the ashen wastes. His father, a broken soldier who had once marched under banners now turned to dust, named him Kael because it meant last ember in the old tongue. The scar appeared the night he was born, a perfect spiral burned into the skin above his heart, glowing faintly whenever thunder rolled across the poisoned sky. The elders found him at 3 summers old, wandering alone among the bone-white trees, speaking to shadows that answered back. They took him to the Citadel of Veils, raised him on prophecies and bitter herbs, trained his hands with swords that drank light, and his mind with riddles that bled. They told him the world was ending, not slowly, not gently, but in one final screaming tear. The veil between realms was thinning, demons whispered through the cracks, the gods had gone silent long ago. "You are the only one who can seal it," the High Oracle told him on his 18th naming day. Her eyes were milky, her voice dry as old parchment. "The spiral on your chest is the key. When the hour comes, you will step into the rift and become the luck." Kael had believed them. For years he believed. He traveled the shattered kingdoms. He slew horrors that wore human faces. He pulled villages back from the edge of collapse. Children called him savior. Warriors knelt. Lovers offered themselves in gratitude. He accepted none of it. He carried the weight like a second skin, tight, suffocating, never quite his own. But the prophecies lied. Or perhaps they simply ran out of time. It began in the north, where the ice had always been eternal. Travelers spoke of a new crack in the sky, wider than any before, bleeding red light that burned the eyes. Then the reports came faster. Entire cities swallowed in hours, forests walking on root legs, rivers flowing upward into the wound in the heavens. The demons no longer whispered, they roared. Kael rode north with what remained of the Veil Guard, 50 warriors who had sworn their lives to the prophecy. They reached the edge of the Great Rift on the 7th day of the bleeding moon. The sky was torn open like rotten cloth. From the gash poured shapes that defied naming, towers of writhing mouths, oceans suspended in mid-fall, faces made of forgotten screams. The High Oracle had promised that when the Chosen stood before the rift, the spiral would blaze, the void would recognize its key, and the fracture would close forever. It did not. Kael stepped forward alone. The wind tore at his cloak. The spiral on his chest flickered once, weakly like a candle in rain, then went dark. He raised his sword anyway. The blade, forged from star iron, shattered against the first demon that reached for him. Claws the length of spears raked across his armor. Blood, his blood, spilled onto the cracked earth and sizzled into smoke. Behind him, the Veil Guard fought. They died quickly, one by one. He heard their screams swallowed by the roar from above. Kael staggered back, chest heaving. The spiral remained cold. No light, no power, no miracle. He fell to his knees. For the first time in his life, the prophecy felt like a joke told by cruel gods who had already left the room. A voice, not from the rift, but from inside his own skull, spoke then, soft, tired, familiar. "You were never the luck, child. You were only the warning." It was his mother's voice, or perhaps the echo of every mother who had lost a child to prophecy. They needed someone to carry hope while the world died. That was all you ever were. He looked up. The rift had grown so wide it now ate half the horizon. Cities burning in the distance. The stars themselves were winking out, one by one. No more prophecies, no more chosen saviors, no more waiting for the hour when everything would be fixed. It was happening, right now. Kael laughed, a broken, hollow sound that hurt his throat. He stood, not as the chosen one, not as anyone's savior, just as a man who had carried too much for too long. He drew the broken half of his sword. It was useless against what came next, but it was his. He turned to the few Veil Guards still breathing, 3, maybe 4, and shouted over the storm. "Go! Run! Live what little time is left! Tell whoever you find that there is no chosen one coming! There never was!" They stared at him, faces streaked with blood and ash. One of them, a girl barely 16 who had once called him her light, whispered, "What about you?" Kael looked at the rift, at the endless dark pouring through. "I'm going to see how far it goes," he said. He walked forward, not to seal it, not to fight it, just to meet it. Because if hope was dead, then at least someone should look the end in the face and refuse to blink. Behind him, the survivors fled. Ahead, the void opened its arms. And somewhere, in the silence between heartbeats, Kael felt the spiral on his chest stir one final time, not with power, but with something quieter. Acceptance. The title had been wrong all along. It wasn't "Chosen One, no more hope, it's happening." It was simply, "No more hope, it's happening." And for the first time in his life, Kael felt free. He stepped into the dark. The world ended not with prophecy, not with thunder, not with a savior's cry. It ended with one tired man walking straight into the mouth of forever, head high, broken sword in hand, no longer waiting to be saved. Because sometimes the bravest thing left to do is stop pretending there's anything left to save. In the shadowed valleys of Eldrath, where the jagged mountains bled rivers of black iron ore into poisoned streams, and the sky hung perpetually heavy with the ashen remnants of ancient cataclysms, the people had clung to their prophecies like drowning men to splintered wood. The scrolls of the first seers, etched in blood mixed with starlight ink on hides of long-extinct beasts, foretold of a cataclysm that would rend the world asunder. But they also promised salvation, a child born under the dying moon, branded with the spiral of forgotten fire, who would stand as the bridge between mortal frailty and the insatiable void beyond. This chosen one would seal the veil, mending the fracture that separated the living from the devouring chaos. They named him Kael, though in the old tongue it whispered, "Last Ember," a flicker of light in an encroaching night. Kael's birth was no heralded event. It unfolded in a dilapidated shepherd's hut on the fringes of the ashen wastes, where the ground cracked like old skin and the air tasted of sulfur. His mother, Ilara, a weaver of forgotten spells, labored alone under a moon that bled crimson across the horizon. She had fled the crumbling kingdom of Valthor, pursued by whispers of heresy, her belly swollen with a child she knew carried the weight of worlds. As the contractions tore through her, a storm raged outside, thunder that shook the earth and lightning that etched patterns in the sky like accusing fingers. When Kael emerged, slick with blood and silent as death, the spiral scar ignited on his tiny chest, a coiling burn that glowed with an inner fire, pulsing in rhythm with the storm's fury. Ilara saw it and wept, knowing the mark for what it was. "You are the end," she murmured, her voice fading as her life ebbed away. "Or perhaps the beginning of one." She died with her hand on his chest, the scar's heat the last warmth she felt. His father, Thorn, a once proud soldier whose banners had turned to rags in endless wars against the encroaching shadows, found her body the next dawn. He buried her under a cairn of obsidian stones, marking it with a single rune, Hope's Grave. Thorn raised Kael in isolation, teaching him the blade and the bow, the lore of stars, and the secrets of survival in a land where even the grass whispered lies. But Thorn was a broken man, haunted by battles where comrades had melted into shadows, their screams echoing in his dreams. He spoke little of the prophecy, fearing it would claim his son as it had claimed everything else. At 3 summers, Kael wandered into the bone-white forests alone, drawn by voices only he could hear. The trees there were petrified relics, their branches like skeletal fingers clawing at the sky. Shadows danced between them, murmuring promises of power and peril. When the elders of the Citadel of Veils arrived, drawn by omens of flickering lights in the wastes, they found the boy conversing with an apparition that vanished at their approach. "He speaks to the void," one elder whispered, eyes wide with awe and terror. They took him that day, over Thorn's feeble protests. "He is marked," the High Oracle declared, her milky eyes seeing beyond flesh. "The spiral calls him home." Thorn watched them ride away, Kael bundled in cloaks of woven silver thread, and drank himself into oblivion that night. He never saw his son again. The Citadel of Veils rose like a dagger from the heart of Eldrath's central plateau, its towers piercing clouds that wept acid rain. Built in an age when gods walked among men, its walls were inscribed with wards that hummed with latent power. Here, Kael was forged. Mornings began with bitter herbs steeped in void-touched waters, sharpening his senses until he could hear the Veil's thin spots cracking like ice underfoot. Afternoons were spent in the forges of light, where smiths hammered star iron into blades that absorbed shadows. Kael's hands blistered and healed, growing calloused under the tutelage of masters who saw him not as a boy, but as a weapon. Nights were for the riddles. The Oracle's acolytes would bind him in chains of silk and pose questions that twisted the mind. What walks on 4 legs in the morning of the world, 2 at its noon, and none when the end comes? Kael learned to bleed for answers, pricking his finger to draw sigils that revealed truths. The prophecies consumed him. He memorized them all: the dying moon's alignment, the rift's awakening, the spiral's role as key and lock. "You are the only one," the High Oracle intoned on his 10th naming day, her voice a rasp like wind through dry bones. "When the veil tears widest, you will step into the rift. Your blood will bind it. The world will endure because of you." Kael believed. How could he not? The scar on his chest warmed at her words, a constant reminder. He trained relentlessly, his body hardening into a vessel of purpose. By 16, he had slain his first horror, a shade beast that wore the face of a lost child, luring travelers into abyssal pits. Its claws raked his arm, but the spiral flared, and he drove his blade through its heart, watching it dissolve into smoke. Word spread. Villages hailed him as savior. In the kingdom of Lirath, he pulled a hamlet from the brink, sealing a minor tear in the veil with a ritual chant and a drop of his blood. Children wove flowers into crowns for him, warriors knelt in fealty. Women and men offered companionship in the firelight, their eyes filled with gratitude and longing. Kael turned them away gently. "I am not free to choose," he would say, his voice steady but laced with unspoken regret. The weight of destiny was a chain around his heart, invisible but unyielding. Yet doubts crept in like shadows at dusk. In quiet moments, alone in the Citadel's archives, Kael pored over faded scrolls. Discrepancies nagged at him. One prophecy spoke of a willing sacrifice, another of unwilling fire. Were the seers infallible, or had time corrupted their visions? He confided in no one, burying the questions deep. Years passed. The world frayed at the edges. Reports trickled in, skies cracking in the east, rivers reversing flow in the south.
Demons no longer skulked in whispers, they manifested boldly, twisting flesh into abominations. Kael traveled with the Veil Guard, an elite cadre sworn to protect the Chosen One. They numbered 100 at first, clad in armor etched with protective runes, wielding weapons that sang when drawn. In the Battle of Whispering Peaks, Kael faced a horde of void spawn, creatures with too many eyes and limbs that bent unnaturally. He led the charge, his sword a blur of light, the spiral blazing like a forge. They won, but at cost. 30 Veil Guard dead, their bodies dissolving into ether. That night, as he tended wounds by campfire, a young guard named Lyra approached him. Barely 18, with hair like spun copper and eyes that held the sea's depth, she fought like a storm. "You saved us," she said, her hand brushing his. Kael pulled away. "The prophecy saves us. I am merely its tool." Lyra's gaze hardened. "Tools don't bleed. Tools don't dream. What do you dream of, Kael?" He had no answer. That night, he dreamed of his mother, not as a dying woman, but alive, laughing in a field untouched by ash. Waking, he felt the scar's warmth fade for the first time. The end accelerated in the north, where eternal ice once held the world in stasis. Scouts returned with tales of a colossal crack in the sky, wider than a canyon, spilling crimson light that scorched the soul. Cities vanished overnight, swallowed by tendrils of darkness. Forests uprooted themselves, marching like armies of the damned. Rivers defied gravity, pouring upward into the wound above. The High Oracle summoned Kael. "The hour is upon us," she croaked, her form frail in her tower's apex. "The rift awakens fully. You must go north. The spiral will guide you."
Kael nodded, but his heart was a storm. He assembled the remaining Veil Guard, 50 strong, including Lyra, who insisted on riding at his side. They journeyed through blighted lands, where the air grew thick with despair. Along the way, they encountered refugees, hollow-eyed families fleeing south, muttering of the end without salvation. Kael offered what aid he could, food, wards against minor shades, but their eyes accused him. "Where is the Chosen?" one old woman spat. "Why does the sky still bleed?" On the 7th day of the bleeding moon, they crested the final ridge. The great rift loomed, a tear in reality, vast as an ocean, edges frayed like torn flesh. From it erupted nightmares, towers of screaming mouths that built themselves from bone and sinew, suspended oceans crashing in slow motion, faces composed of evaporated dreams, contorted in eternal agony. The Veil Guard formed ranks. Kael dismounted, heart pounding. This was the moment. The prophecies converged here. He stepped forward alone, as decreed. The wind howled, ripping at his cloak like hungry fingers. He bared his chest, waiting for the spiral to ignite, to channel the power that would seal the breach. It flickered, once, weakly, like a guttering candle in a gale, then dimmed to nothing. Panic clawed at him. He raised his star-iron sword, channeling every incantation he knew. The blade shattered against the first demon's claw, fragments scattering like stars falling from grace. Talons raked his side, blood welling hot and fast, evaporating into acrid smoke on the cracked earth. The Veil Guard surged forward. Battle erupted in chaos, swords clashing against impossible flesh, screams mingling with the rift's roar. One by one, they fell, gutted, dissolved, crushed under writhing masses. Lyra fought beside him, her blade a whirlwind. "Kael, the spiral! Why isn't it—" "It lied," he shouted back, dodging a tendril that sought his throat. "All of it, a lie." A demon's maw closed on a guard nearby, bones crunching. Lyra screamed, slashing wildly. Kael fell to his knees amid the carnage, blood soaking the ground. The spiral remained inert, a mocking scar. Then the voice, soft, weary. echoing from within. You were never the lock, my son, only the spark to light the way while the fire consumed all. His mother's voice, or the collective sigh of every deceived soul? They needed hope to endure the inevitable. You were that hope, nothing more. He looked up. The rift had swollen, devouring the horizon. Distant cities ignited in unholy fire, stars extinguished like snuffed candles. Laughter bubbled from Kael's throat, raw, broken, defiant. The weight lifted, shattered like his sword. He rose, gripping the hilt's remnant, useless, but his. To the survivors, Lyra and 3 others, bloodied and gasping, he bellowed, "Flee! Live the fragments left! Tell them no chosen comes, no hope remains. It's happening now!" Lyra's eyes met his, tears carving paths through grime. "Come with us!" He glanced at the rift, its maw beckoning. "I must see the truth beyond the lies." She nodded, understanding. They fled south, shadows lengthening behind them. Kael turned to the void. The spiral stirred, not with prophecies' fire, but with quiet resolve, acceptance. He walked forward not as savior, but as witness. The world didn't end in thunderous climax or heroic stand. It unraveled thread by thread, with one man stepping into oblivion, head unbowed, broken blade in fist, embracing the inevitable. Because when prophecies crumble and hope dissolves, what remains is the raw act of facing the end without illusion. And in that, perhaps, lay the truest freedom.